Hi Booktube, and welcome to a new video. This was going to be an unboxing video, but no boxes, all packages. The reason for that, as I've suggested before, is because a lot of the stuff I get is off Amazon Marketplace because it's quite hard to track down the stuff. So it's very rarely that I get stuff in boxes. So I'm going to have to call this a haul video or a TBR video. But anyway, let's get cracking. One I'd received a couple of weeks ago. This is Dark Eden by Chris Beckett, which was recommended to me by Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, because he and I were talking about science fiction, because neither of us read huge amounts of science fiction, but we were comparing notes, and I said I particularly like science fiction that deals with sort of linguistics or language in some way, in the sense of an alien culture has a totally different approach to language. He says, "Oh, have you read Dark Eden by Chris Beckett?" I said, "No, I've never heard of it." So I tracked this down, and Jason has a very, very good interview on his blog with Chris Beckett. So one of the best interviews I read in terms of the questions he's asked the writer, just so sort of incisive and gives rein to the writer talking about writing in ways that I think don't really sort of get sort of uncovered by questions. So I'm afraid I don't have a link to it. So if Jason happens along this video, by all means, Jason, please put a link to it in the comments. So that's Dark Eden. The other person who I had this type of conversation with was Bookish North, who's a Norwegian booktuber who you should follow. And she has actually studied linguistics, and so I asked her what science fiction books would she recommend, and I listed the ones that I'd read, which were The Embedded by Ian Watson, China Melville's Embassy Town, and Babel 17. And she said, well, apart from those, there's Ursula Le Guin's, I can't remember which one it was, and I've never read any Ursula Le Guin, and I know she's highly touted, particularly on BookTube, so I might track that one down. But the other was Jack Vance's book, oh God, again, I can't remember it, the something of Pao, P-A-O, but unfortunately that seems to be out of print and quite expensive on Amazon. So I don't know if I can track that one down. If anyone knows or has a copy they'd be prepared to lend me, I'd be very grateful. Or if they wanted to do a book swap, indeed, if they wanted to unhaul it for whatever reason, because Bookish North did describe it as sort of quite sort of pulpy, quite trashy science fiction, but she said it does have this sort of stream of linguistics in it. Anyway, enough burbling, let's get to the exciting part, at least exciting for me, if not for you, watching someone rip open non-ecologically friendly plastics. This is the first one. Aha, okay. Less dramatic than opening a cardboard box, and of course you can recycle cardboard boxes. The Red Clocks by Lenny Zumas. Now this came about because on my author A to Z tag, I split it up. I did two, and I'll post the links to them. One for male writers and one for women writers. And on the women writers one, I commented that I hadn't read any books, or I certainly didn't own any books by women writers whose name began with Z. And someone very helpfully said, I think it was Jackie McMenamin, very helpfully said, Lenny Zumas, Red Clocks, which I'd sort of followed because it came out this year, I think, and I'd followed it on BookTube, and it sounded vaguely interesting, other than the fact that it's yet another apocalyptic book. But actually, the more I sort of see people talk about it, the more it seems to be sort of slightly above the sort of mass of those types of books. 5 Women, 1 Question, What is a Woman For? Hilarious, terrifying and masterful, Elisa Nutting, author of Tampa. Zuma's language is real sorcery. I think that was the thing that I was responding to. It dismantles the world you think you know and takes you to strange, fecund territories of the imagination. Strange and lovely and luminous, I love Red Clocks with my whole heart. Lenny Zumas' writing is fearless and funny, swift, sassy and sensational. Well, you know, I now have a woman writer whose name begins with Z, so at the very least. So I'm looking forward to that. Next. Oh, what have we got here? We've got rather a nice fetching book depository bookmark. It's rather nice with a sort of fluorescence. Who's your book bestie? Oh God, if I revealed that, I'd start a civil war on BookTube, so no, I can't do that. Okay, now on to the book itself. Drive Your Plough Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk, who's Polish and won the Man Booker International. This is Fitzcarraldo editions, obviously, as you know, one of my favourite imprints. Now, the book of hers that won the Man Booker International, I couldn't bring myself to read because it was sort of travel-based fiction, which doesn't interest me, sort of travel logs done as fiction. And the other thing was it seemed to have a trope about, you know, sort of strange journeys undertaken by body parts removed from the body. So I'd read the real life cases of Einstein's brain, Napoleon's penis, you know, all the sort of strange stories behind, you know, when these are at death, these are removed from the body. Einstein's brain, because, you know, scientists wanted to study what made him such a great mind. Napoleon's penis for obvious reasons, I suppose. And then that, you know, over time, you know, they become, you know, lost or take some very strange routes. There was also a famous cowboy or outlaw, I should say, who was stuffed and went on sort of travelling shows and what happened to his body as well. It's all, you know, but, you know, I've read a lot of real life stories about this, and as a trope, I'm not interested in it in fiction, so I really couldn't bring myself to read Flights, but, you know, I did want to read her. And fortunately this came out, the fantastic title, Drive Your Plough Over the Bones of the Dead. I don't know if it's a novel or short stories, can't remember now. Looks like it might be short stories, but, you know, that's fine. And I haven't read a Fitzcarraldo book for a while. The last two I read were My Documents by Alejandro Zambra, which is incredibly disappointing, and Pond by Mary Louise Bennett, I think that's her name, which was highly touted on BookTube by people whose opinion I really respect, but I didn't particularly get on with it. So I'm looking forward to that. And lastly, if this is what I think it is, this is going to bring this video to a very sudden end because I'm going to shut off the camera and go and read it. So in my, well, I can't remember which video, but a couple of times I said that the people I really want books from this year are Houellebecq and Ben Marcus, because they haven't written anything for a couple of years. And this, hopefully, is going to be one of those geezers. Indeed it is. Ben Marcus, Notes from the Fog. So, slightly disappointingly, these are short stories, because his last book, called Leaving the Sea, was short stories. And I wonder, you know, if this book is in the vein of his other writing, which is why he is my favourite writer today, because he does amazing things with language and the function of language as much as the vocabulary of language. But I wonder if he's unable to find a new way, a new novel to hang, you know, to hang his frame. So he did The Flame Alphabet, he did The Age of Wire and String, which are two of my favourite books of all time, and they're novels. And I just wonder if he's unable to take his particular obsession and his sort of tropes at the moment into finding a new novel, which is why this is a second successive book of short stories. Advanced praise for Notes from the Fog. Beautiful, heartbreaking, impeccably crafted and original meditations on and figurations of how it feels to be human, a father, an American at the hither edge of the 21st century. To read Ben Marcus is to discover a new language trapped inside of the old one. That's very true. Sentences that cut through every layer straight into the heart of the matter. Writing that startles you into wakefulness. To know all these words, but I've never seen them used like this before. Yeah, this is spot on. This is from Charles Yu. To read Ben Marcus is to be challenged and entertained and inspired all at once. I'm just checking that it is short stories rather than non-fiction. Yeah, here we go. With these 13 riveting stories, alternately strange, moving and brutally funny, Ben Marcus gives us eerie, mordant, unsettling visions of the modern world. Never has existential catastrophe been so much fun. Well, as I say, I'm going to wave bye-bye to you and go away and start reading this. Till next time, thanks very much. Very excited.